No moves to talk about yet for the Mariners, but some rumors. I'll start with the most prominent, that being a potential trade of Luis Castillo. Jordan, what kind of risk, we'll probably have a couple questions about this, what kind of risk is Seattle assuming in dealing one of their starters?
Yeah, I think that is the ultimate question. You know, we've had some version of this conversation over the last couple of years where you look at the pitching they've kind of assembled and you said, all right, well, is this a time to trade from a strength, to address other parts of the roster? I think what's so interesting is how that conversation has kind of evolved as the five starters that we have, grown so accustomed to seeing over the last 2 years have shifted in their value and what we kind of expect from them. Whereas to me, I feel like the reason that we're even entertaining this Castillo thing is there's certainly a financial component involved, which we can get to, but it's also that how well those other four guys have kind of emerged, right? I mean, Gilbert coming off this incredible all-star season, what Brian Wu has been able to when he's been on the mound, what Bryce Miller has done, like a lot of it also speaks to those other guys that have gone up. But I also would still say that doesn't mean Luis Castillo is not a good pitcher anymore. It's just that relative to the rest of these younger guys who are still ascending, he feels more expendable. But I think we also should not underrate how big of a risk it would be to trade someone like that, because I think what Castillo could still bring is immensely valuable.
What type of team would be interested in Castillo? Like, what's left in the tank? And then is he a guy who goes to a team that is rebuilding, that needs an ace, a spark, or does he go to a rotation that's already established? What's ideal for Castillo?
Well, I think, again, when you start factoring in the money owed, which is not like totally over the top, I think when you consider what starting pitchers have been paid this winter, and I think that we are still going to see, right? We still haven't seen what Corbin Burns is going to get, but based on Snell and based on Fried and some of these other guys, Castillo being owed $24 million a year for at least the next 3 years is not really that much. And you also consider that this is about the age when free agents are normally signing, right? He's entering his age 32 season. It's not like he's, I understand why you're saying, oh, what does he have left in the tank? I mean, the guy's only 31, 32. He's still, I think, one of the better pitchers in the American League. And so to that point, I think it is absolutely going to be a team that is in it to win it right now. I mean, sure, maybe there's a team that, a team like the Nationals who are kind of trying to get an established veteran presence who maybe isn't going to win right now, but you could get Castillo and he could kind of be there for the next few years. But it seems more likely that the teams that are going to be most aggressive are going to be the teams that we've already heard rumors about, right? Teams like Boston, teams like the Mets, teams like maybe the Phillies, although they already have a pretty set top of the rotation. But I think the Mets and Boston, it's not an accident. Those are the teams that we've heard the most about.
Jordan, I have a big question, so feel free to ramble on this one if you need to. In what way do you think the Mariners are sincerely limited in kind of what they can do this offseason? And in what way do you think they limit themselves?
That's a great question. And I was just reflecting on the fact that, as you mentioned, right, no move so far. Now, when we go back a year ago, a lot had happened, but at that point, it was a lot of moves that were to clear space. We talk about these limitations and we talk about what payroll constraints, which again, let's be clear, are in most ways self-imposed, right? But once you accept that these are the kind of the limits that we're working within, we have not seen them make any moves to go backwards. Last offseason, because of the uncertainty with the TV stuff and because of just all the reporting around unwillingness to really push forward, the organization, by their moves that they made, whether it was trading Suarez, whether it was trading the move they made with Atlanta, whether it was trading, Robbie Ray, right? Like these were all moves that were very clearly intended to move salary out. That has not happened yet, right? Now, I know the decision to not bring back Polanco is some version of that, but we have not seen moves like that. So now we're kind of waiting to see how far forward can they go. They have not gone backwards, but that is the thing that is so hard to say is there actually more room than we realize, and they're just waiting for that right move. The trade market right now is very, very difficult to navigate. And if they are unwilling to kind of play in the free agent space, which, let's be clear, sure, the easy thing is, oh, well, whatever, just go sign Alex Bregman or go sign the guy at the top. But the free agent space for the positions they're looking for is admittedly very thin, regardless of how much they're willing to spend or not. And so when you start talking about trade, it's just, I know we've seen them pull off as many trades as they have. It's like, oh, well, how can they not do something like that again. But remember, it took until the end of January for them to pull off the Polanco deal last year, and I do wonder if it's going to take that long to kind of find the right deal this year again too.
We know how great this rotation is, so it's kind of a difficult question to answer. Well, what I'm going to ask you, but is there a team that is in a similar position that the Mariners are in? Like you got a rotation you believe in. You believe you have yourself a star in Julio Rodriguez, some complementary pieces in the outfield, but you're just missing some infield pieces, because this is what I want to do. I want to look at both these teams this offseason and just compare the moves and see where each one ends up. Obviously, there's a bunch of other factors that go into this thing, right? But is there another team that we can look at and say, well, they're in a similar position with ownership that probably doesn't want to spend as much as others, just like the Mariners?
Right, who are like set with infielders. I mean, honestly, and pitching to some degree. I guess Minnesota is another team who has been extremely quiet, like arguably even more quiet than almost any other team in the league. Now, I know they have an actual sale of the team going on, so that is absolutely, impacting stuff like that. I mean, I guess, when you're talking about teams in this range, I don't know. It's not that many. It's a very specific problem that the Mariners have kind of put themselves in, because I understand what you're getting at, but in terms of other teams, they kind of have set younger groups of pitchers that they feel good about, but then those obvious holes in the infield. It's not that. I guess Pittsburgh would be the other one. Now, Pittsburgh is in like an extremely different. They are at the bottom in terms of, thriftiness. Their payroll is basically half of what Seattle's is right now. So I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison either. But that's another team. We already just saw them do it, right? We just saw the trade that they made with Cleveland and indirectly Toronto. They dealt Luis Ortiz, one of their young pitchers, because they felt like they had the depth to backfill it, and they got a guy in Spencer Horwitz who they believe can help them offensively, that can be around there for a long time. Again, that's like not the sexiest, move, but ultimately it's going to take some creativity to pull off the kind of thing that Seattle is trying to do. And the big question I still have is it second base or is it third base, or do they not care? Because we have no way of knowing. Obviously, Dylan Moore's flexibility gives them the opportunity to do one and not the other. But at this point, we know that the goal should just be upgrading by any means necessary.
One thing that is, I'm listening to your point about Pittsburgh and was thinking the same thing about, like, yeah, there are some teams, but they almost intentionally don't spend, whereas the Mariners almost intentionally hover outside 10, like just hover around the middle, even though we think they, could or would love to see them spend more. They're never going to be like a top 5 spending team. But what I think for so many people, and Jordan, I'm curious if you're among them, is so frustrating about Seattle sometimes is they can be really fun. Like there's times you look and you go, oh my God, you have some really cool pieces. In addition to what is very clearly a top of the line starting rotation, you've got Julio, you've got Cal, like you've got a team that with some tweaks could be such a fun watch. And what is more fun than a really great baseball team? How close are they?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think that is where the frustration is totally warranted, is because they are right there. They still did win a lot of games last year, right? They were only one of the first teams outside the postseason. And that's not something worth celebrating necessarily, but it is still worth something understanding when you project forward and realize, okay, like this is a good team. This is not like Pittsburgh where you look at the lineup and you'll be like, oh my God, this is like light years away from being competitive. You do have the core pieces in place, and so we've just been waiting to see them make the right next move. Now, the point that I've made over and over as I've talked about this team, like the most important players in the team are already on the team, and it's more fun for us to speculate on the guys that they can bring in, and it's not that the team should not be trying to meaningfully improve through external upgrades, but the reality is the most important things about the team are Julio, are JP Crawford playing a lot better than he did last year, right? There's parts of the bullpen that were a lot more disappointing, and that's another area that I know has not really been discussed as like a focus of improvement, but I would argue should be something that should be addressed more seriously. And so it's not as fun to speculate and just hope that the players that are already there get better or bounce back. But I think when you look at the players in place, that's the answer, because it's just when we know we're not talking about a player of Alex Bregman's caliber to be added at third base or someone of that level added at second base, like who that player is going to be very interesting, and I'm excited to find out who it is. But that player is not going to define the 2025 Mariners. It's the players that are already on the team.
I've used this analogy plenty of times of just, the division is a neighborhood, And when you drive through your neighborhood and you got HOAs and stuff, you're looking at lawns like, man, Bobby got to do that lawn. It's not looking too good over there, man. Got to tighten it up. How's the neighborhood looking? Whose lawn looks the best right now when you look at the AL West?
This is a great question. I'm so glad you brought this up because this is, I think, another part of fans' consternation right now is the direction of the other teams in the division. I think Houston's decision to trade Kyle Tucker could prove smart in the long run, but let's be real. You don't have to face Kyle Tucker anymore when you face the Astros. That's a win. That's that's a massive success for the Seattle Mariners, no matter how good Cam Smith is in 2027, because the Mariners are trying to win right now and the Astros are their main competition, and then they just traded away their best overall player. That is something that should be taken into consideration. But then you look at teams like the A's, who are obviously trying to improve. You saw that they had a very legitimate lineup and played very reasonably well, over that second half last year, and now trying to add pitching. Texas is the team I'm still skeptical of just because their pitching they had so much to replace. And I know they brought back Eovaldi, but that bullpen is talk about dire straits. Like, they still have so much to do on the mound that makes it hard to take them especially seriously. And then, realistically, the Angels, who have been every year, they say, all right, this is the time we're going to win. It's just they don't really deserve the benefit of the doubt. I understand they continue to try and add talent to raise their floor and in theory their ceiling, but they're coming off 99 losses. So they're not a team I'm going to factor in very seriously. But like I said, you look at Houston trading away their best player. I think they're still going to add, so the winter's not done yet. And I think by the time we get to spring training, you're still going to be at a situation where you look at the Astros roster and you say, okay, damn, yeah, they still look like the favorite, or Texas if they do decide to spend a little bit more. And the fact that the A's are no longer going to be a pushover, that's a serious thing to consider as well, because that was obviously the case for the last few years, and you can't say that anymore.
Hey, let's get back to your point about the bullpen. Shannon Dreyer is our Mariners insider, and she's mentioned that as well. And I think it's such an area of focus for baseball writers and analysts and folks that are watching this team closely. What is your primary concern when it comes to Seattle's bullpen? Where would you like to see them add?
Yeah, so obviously we've seen them have a lot of success in uncovering guys and developing players from unexpected places into reliable or impact arms, right? Of course, Sewald comes to mind, but what they did with Justin Topa before they traded him, what Colin Snyder, of course, became in 2024 was, I think, really impressive. The problem is right now, when you talk about impact, in theory, the combination of Munoz, Gregory Santos on talent, and Matt Brash coming back from surgery, like, if you can guarantee that all three of those guys are going to pitch 60 times or even 50 times and be healthy, like, yeah, that's pretty good. That is impact. Like, that is not fun to face. But based on Santos's history and injury history, based on Brash coming back from surgery, based on how hard they've rode Munoz, I don't feel awesome about that trio. I love the talent. I do want to believe that those three guys will be kind of the foundation of this bullpen, but it's just a lot to really be relying on other guys that ultimately, the strikeouts are not necessarily there for a lot of these other guys. And so finding some more whiffs in this bullpen, I think, would be really good. And maybe it is internal guys. Maybe there are guys that can come up and provide that we don't know about yet. It's not like I'm doubting the organization's ability to develop pitching, but I just, with that three, that seems to be what they're really banking on paper, I just think there's too many questions going around it when it was an area of weakness last year. And when you see how good the starting pitching is, you don't want the bullpen to be leaking runs late when your starters are that good.
All right, Jordan, tell us what you got coming up here on the slate for you. Winter meetings are done, but we have an entire offseason to go. What's up next for you?
Yeah, so Baseball Barbacast, I know we do it 3 times a week during the season. We're kind of doing more 2 times a week in the off season, but we're keeping the podcast going. So check out Baseball Barbacast, and all of my writing is at Yahoo Sports, and check that out. And I'll probably be appearing on all kinds of other Mariners podcasts at some point here this winter. So
wonderful.
Always happy to come on, guys.
He is Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. Jordan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jordan.
Appreciate you guys.